Marley.
And I'm Liz, and we are here for our fourth and final episode of the season of What's Cooking at the Capitol, where we bring you into our kitchens to talk about food and farm policy issues that are making their way through the State House, while also sharing some of our favorite seasonal recipes. Today, we are going to talk about the statewide good food purchasing policy, which will bring more transparency to the way Illinois procures food and shifts millions of taxpayer dollars toward local, fair, healthy, humane, and sustainable farms and businesses in our state. So if that sounds like a good idea to you,
Sounds good to me.
You can go ahead and take action right now to contact your senator and ask for their support of the Good Food Purchasing Policy, which is a House Joint Resolution. The number's 33. Don't have to worry about all that technical stuff. We made it super easy, and we're posting a link in the chat that will take you right to it, and we'll get that email sent to your senator.
And if you need more details, you're in luck because we're going to break it down for you why we make a delicious school lunch recipe.
School lunch recipe, delicious. I usually don't put those two words in the same sentence, so are you sure about this one, Molly?
I am sure, and I know it's so unfortunate that we don't always think of school lunch as being delicious, but school lunch just should be amazing. It's what we feed our kids every day, and they deserve fresh, nutritious lunches that taste great. And what's more, schools and institutions have the ability to not only serve delicious lunch, but also be economic drivers for their surrounding community. Schools purchase hundreds of thousands of dollars of food each year, and just think if even a portion of that was reinvested with farms and food businesses in the community. That could mean thousands of dollars staying in the local economy. So that's exactly what we want to talk to you about today. Our hope is that a good food purchasing policy will transform the way that schools, institutions, state universities, veterans' homes, and other state-funded institutions think about transform the way they think about how they purchase ingredients and the food that they serve.
Okay, so I'm on board. What are we making?
Okay, so today we are making a lasagna and salad recipe, which is actually a recipe that comes from Lincoln Elementary School District number 27. Shout out to Lincoln Elementary School District. Last year, they started a journey to transform the way their school purchases food and the way they make school lunch. They began replacing heat and serve meals with meals that are made from scratch that feature local ingredients. So they're really just a great example of a school district and a community coming together and taking a look at the big picture and thinking about how they want to make a change and then actually taking the steps to do it. So they've kind of got their own local food purchasing policy going on right now at Lincoln School District. So this is actually a meal that they serve to their students and staff. It features local beef from Two Hill Beef and greens from Prairie Earth Farm. Shout out to two great Central Illinois farms. And both of those farms are situated with less than 30 miles from the town of Lincoln. Now, the Lincoln School District recipe, they make, this recipe for hundreds of kids. We had to scale it down a bit.
We're not having a block party, don't worry.
So the recipe that we're dropping in the chat is one that is scaled down for a version for a family of 4. And today we are using local beef from John and Emma's Place and greens from Fox Path Farm, because those are what we could get our hands on locally. So wherever your local farmer's market is, pick up some local beef, some local greens from your farmer's market. You'll also need garlic and onion. You'll need some tomato sauce. You're gonna reuse no-cook lasagna noodles because we want to make it super easy. And then you'll also need cottage cheese or ricotta cheese and some mozzarella for the top. So my mom actually always made our lasagna with cottage cheese, and I had no idea that lasagna was made with ricotta until I was like 21 years old. Hey. but it's a great, cottage cheese is very budget friendly, so if you're making food for a crowd, which school districts often do, cottage cheese is a great budget friendly option. It's also really high in protein, so that's great.
So we're just making it fancy.
Yeah, we did a little mix, cottage and ricotta, so we get a great flavor, a traditional, Italian flavor in there, but also that high protein mix with the cottage food, or with the cottage cheese. Thinking about cottage food was the other bill we were working on. And so Lincoln School District also does something else that's a little unusual. They use Monterey Jack cheese and Colby Jack cheese on top of their lasagna. A little outside the box. We like this cheese, going for that sharp flavor, I guess. We like it. Use what you got. So good job, Lincoln School District, on that one. So we're gonna taste test that a little bit later.
Right. So I'm excited. This sounds really good. And I wish that we could get some, when I went to school, some local lasagna. That would have been amazing.
I know, me too. Lasagna's so good.
It really makes me happy to think that this is what kiddos get to eat every day, that people are taking the time to care about what is going into their bodies and giving them something delicious to eat. So why don't more schools and institutions serve meals like this, Molly?
Yeah, well, it's not always easy. So when a school or an institution buys food, they have to put out a bid request saying what they need and in what quantities. And then companies and farms can put in a bid to win that contract to provide those ingredients. Mm-hmm. But too often, it is out-of-state corporations that win these huge food contracts because they can put in the lowest bid. And there's no accounting for nutrition, quality, fair wages, humane practices. It's really just all about the lowest price bid.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's hard for a smaller farmer to win a contract when they're competing against a giant corporation.
Exactly. And the thing is, the money that schools and institutions spend on food is your money. It's your taxpayer dollars, and you deserve to know how it's being spent. In fact, every year, Illinois spends millions to procure food for public institutions, such as those veterans' homes, state universities, the schools, and prisons that we mentioned earlier. And the state of Illinois is one of the biggest purchasers of food in the state, which of course makes sense because they're one of the biggest institutions in the state. But there's just so little transparency in how this money is spent and what kinds of businesses it supports. There's no mechanism for tracking how much, if any, is invested in local or sustainable businesses.
Well, this is an issue I want to get behind. I'm a taxpaying citizen. What can I do?
Well, Illinois needs a new, transparent, and transformative purchasing policy that builds economic wealth and public health for our communities. And you can help by urging your state legislator to co-sponsor the Good Food Purchasing Task Force resolution.
Okay, I do want to do that, but I also want to get started making this lasagna. We've got some layers to make. So why don't we get started cooking, and then you can tell me a little bit more about what this task force is.
Okay, great. So we've got some washed lettuce here, so why don't you go ahead and get that chopped, get that ready to go for our salad. While you're doing that, I've already made the ground beef and tomato sauce mixture here, so I'm going to start layering that up. We're just going to go a little bit of this delicious mixture here first. This was just sauteed onions, garlic in olive oil for about 2 minutes. Then you throw in your ground beef. You start browning that, and then when you're all done, you throw in those crushed red tomatoes and tomato sauce, and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. And you're going to end up with this delicious mixture that is, pretty much homemade and very quick. Okay, so layers. We got beef, noodles, and then cheese. We're gonna put another layer on top of that.
I do also want to say we added a couple eggs to this mixture, and we got those locally as well from Bland Family Farm in Jacksonville. I picked those up at the market.
All right, we're almost done here. Get this quickly on. Stacking it.
And we need the cheesy cheese. We have a little mozzarella for ours, so.
And you can see this comes together in so quick, yes. 2 minutes.
Do we need to get rid of any more sauce? Are we good there?
So we will throw a little extra on top and finish it off. Perfect. Probably should just see that cheese in there. That's okay.
So quick. All right. And finishing it with the cheese. Okay, it's gonna be cheesy goodness.
Get this in the oven at 325 for 20 minutes. No, for an hour. Sorry.
325 for an hour. Awesome.
For the last 20 minutes, you'll probably want to put some tinfoil over the top just to make sure that cheese doesn't burn. You're going to know when it's ready because that cheese is going to get really gooey and the sauce is going to start to bubble.
Cool. So that's in the oven. So let's get to this Good Food Task Force.
Okay. So this year, a small group of organizations, including Illinois Stewardship Alliance, the Illinois Environmental Council, Chicago Food Policy Action Council, and HEAL, introduced a Good Food Purchasing Task Force resolution.
All right, so don't want to cut you off before you even get started, but can we just explain what a resolution is for the folks at home?
Yeah, so a resolution is a little different than a bill. It doesn't go through the normal legislative process, and it doesn't create any new law changes in the state law. But joint resolutions have to be passed by the House and by the Senate, but because they aren't laws, they aren't signed by the governor. What it basically does is proclaim the General Assembly's intent to do something.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it's like a New Year's resolution.
Yeah, it's exactly like a New Year's resolution, except for the states.
So sometimes my New Year's resolutions don't always go to plan. But so why would anyone want to introduce a resolution?
Okay, fair question, fair question. Sometimes a resolution is a good idea if you want to rally support for an idea, but you're not quite ready to introduce actual legislation. So once you put something to law, it can be really tricky to fix. You want to get it right the first time. So a resolution can help bring all the right people to the table to start exploring an idea and thinking about what it might look like before you take it and turn it into legislation. And that's exactly what the Good Food Task Force resolution does. It creates a task force of state leaders and agency officials, so folks like the Illinois Department of Agriculture, the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Central Management Services, which was responsible for the state's procurement, brings all those state agencies and leaders together to assess the state's current food policy and how they procure food and their current practices, and then start thinking about a new procurement policy based on the good food purchasing policy framework.
Molly, you threw in another word. All right, so I was behind everything, and now you threw in good food purchasing policy framework. So what is that, and what is good food?
Yeah, so the Good Food Purchasing Policy is a framework that encourages state institutions and agencies to purchase food not only on that lowest price bid like we talked about, but on 5 key values: local, fair, healthy, humane, and sustainable. Yes, you can dance while you say those two. So as part of the Good Food Purchasing Policy framework, agencies report their purchasing practices annually. They receive a report card that is available to the public, so we can all see how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. And then the agencies are provided with support to help make improvements. So if they're only, doing 1% of local purchasing in, the first year, then they would be provided with support to help get that number up and start purchasing, 5%, 10%, 15% from local, fair, healthy, humane, sustainable businesses.
Okay, I'm understanding. Do we have any examples? Are there other states or cities that have done this before?
Well, actually, we do. 8 cities across the country have passed a good food purchasing policy, including the city of Chicago in 2017 and Cook County in 2018. And of course, on a more local level, we already have schools like the Lincoln Elementary School District who are kind of doing their own version of a local purchasing policy.
Okay, awesome. So way to go, Windy City. Do we know how things are going?
Well, I don't, but I know someone who does. Please welcome Marley with the Chicago Food Policy Action Council.
Welcome. Welcome to my kitchen. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Liz and Molly. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. So for those at home, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do at the Chicago Food Policy Action Council and just what your role is there?
Absolutely.
And what the CFPAC is.
Yeah, so the Chicago Food Policy Action Council, or CFPAC for short, co-facilitates and advocates for policies that advance food justice and sovereignty for Chicago and across our food shed. And I serve with CFPAC as the Good Food Purchasing Project Manager, helping to advance the Good Food Purchasing Initiative of Metro Chicago, which includes working really closely with the Chicago Department of Public Health and Cook County Department of Public Health to coordinate the good food purchasing policies at the city and county level. But yeah, we also are working with other community anchor institutions like local hospitals and universities who are also exploring good food purchasing policies of their own.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. Doing great work. And I think we're dropping in the chat where you can find CFPAC's website. So that's really exciting to hear that the city of Chicago and Cook County have already adopted this good food purchasing policy. Do you have any idea of how much the city and Cook County are currently spending on food? We're talking about taxpayer dollars and all this stuff. So yeah, what's the economic impact here when they start changing their purchasing practices?
Sure. Yeah, great question. We've calculated that roughly $118 million are spent on food annually for public nutrition programs, So, for example, the Chicago Public Schools school meal program, the Park District summer meal program for kids, senior meals, the Cook County Health and Hospital System, patient meals in the cafeterias, the jails and juvenile temporary detention center, etc. So we believe that actually that number is closer to 300 million if you include food concessions on public property and special events that include food that public institutions put on. And so if you think about it, if you were to shift just 15% of that spend, you're talking about $45 million for local farms and food businesses annually. And I did just want to mention that the city and county's policies really prioritize purchases from local farms and food businesses run by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, so that we're ensuring that we're leveraging this policy to foster racial equity in our local food system as more institutional demand is created for local products.
So cool. And $45 million to local, fair, healthy, humane, sustainable BIPOC farmers. Like, that's amazing. That's $45 million. I mean, I can't even picture that amount in my head right now.
It's hard to wrap our head around, but the figures definitely matter. And thank you for doing that work to figure it out. So it sounds like a great idea in theory, but yeah, we're having trouble wrapping around some of it and how it actually works. So what does this look like in practice?
Yeah, so I can walk you through a little bit of what this looks like. Our first step is to work with each institution on collecting food purchasing data on all of the food products that they are spending money on annually from their food vendors, from their food service management companies and food distributors. And once we have that data collected, we then send it to our partners at the National Center for Good Food Purchasing to analyze and assess what percentage of that spend falls into these 5 value categories of local economies, environmental sustainability, valued workforce, animal welfare, and nutrition. And based on that report card, we then can assess and create an action plan to make shifts towards those value categories in the future. And a big part of that is changing the contract language for future contracts that are signed between food service management companies and food vendors, food distributors that work with the city and county, so that those goals are sort of codified into the contracts, and we can really hold everyone across the supply chain to those good food standards.
Absolutely, that is so important. So yeah, I'd like to see data from time to time. If I wanted to see this report card that you mentioned, is that something that I can find?
That is another great question, Liz. Yeah, we're working with the City of Chicago and Cook County to develop a system for the public to be able to access this data directly as new good food purchasing program assessments are completed, those report cards. And in the meantime, we definitely encourage folks to check out some of the public events that we've been hosting with institutional partners, including the Chicago Food Justice Summit that CivPAC hosts annually in February, as well as the Cook County Food Summit, which serves as the county's sort of annual public report out of what's happening with GFPP. And then we also encourage you to kind of sign up for the Good Food Coalition listserv, where we'll be sending out updates and events and alerts for anyone that signs up.
Cool, great. Yeah, check that out in the chat. And I love the Food Summit. That's one of my favorite things to do. Great job transitioning all that to online this year. So if our state passes this good food purchasing policy, how is that going to affect schools across Illinois, like the Lincoln School District that we're featuring today? There's a handful of especially state-run universities and veterans homes, all that Molly mentioned before, where it makes sense to have a state good food purchasing program policy. But it sounds like school food procurement is something that's handled more on a local level, like at the city or county level. So how would a state GFPP intersect or impact those more local level decisions in schools or communities outside of Chicago? Loaded question there, sorry.
Yeah. A lot of the funding for local nutrition programs, run by your local school district or another department or agency, that funding comes from the USDA and other federal agencies. That's sent to the state, which then passes through and disseminates that funding throughout local institutions and school districts. So the hope is that this Good Food Task Force at the state level will really help ensure that the state's processes for passing through these funds support the goals of local agencies working on good food purchasing policies. It may, for example, identify potential incentives for additional funding that local institutions can access if they purchase Illinois-grown food. They can also create model templates and best practices and other really valuable resources for procurement that local entities can adapt and use to help them, really take a good food purchasing policy at the local level.
We should reward people for doing great things, and especially bringing more local food into the stomachs of our children and folks at state agencies and our veterans' homes and everything. Everyone deserves that right to access nutritional food. So,
yeah, sounds like this is going to be a great policy for the state.
I'm ready to get behind this resolution.
So thank you so much, Marley. You really helped us visualize how this actually works in practice, and is, as always, so great to talk with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Marley. Yeah, so, wow, we've talked a lot, and I'm hungry, so I'm going to get the plates ready and stuff, and because of magical Facebook Live,
TV magic.
The lasagna's done.
Oh man, I'm trying to do a little close up here. Close up.
It looks amazing.
We're gonna go ahead and get this served up. Let's see. I'm gonna put the salads on the plate. Do you want to serve it up,
or we'll switch?
There we go.
There we go.
That's how we'll do it.
A nice little salad. Where did you say this was from?
Fox Path Farm out of Mount Pulaski, Illinois, and they always grow the most beautiful greens.
Yes.
All right.
It also calls for half a banana on the plate. Gotta get our fruits and veggies on there.
Yeah. Oh man, do we have a glass for milk here?
Oh, we'll just show this. This is fine. So we got some Prairie Farms milk, and yeah, we have just created.
This is your ideal school lunch.
Bam.
Also something that I'm really excited to eat.
Yes. So. Where are we at? This looks great. So tell me again where the resolution is now and how I can support it.
Yeah, so good news. The resolution just passed the House unanimously last week. Yeah, so it's now on its way to the Senate and will be voted on this week. If you want the state of Illinois to start purchasing more local, fair, healthy, humane, and sustainable food from businesses in our state, you can contact your senator right now and ask them to support the Good Food Task Force resolution. We've made that super simple. Just click on the link in the chat, fill out the form, and it will send a letter directly to your senator.
Love it. I'm doing it right now, Molly.
Okay, and while she's doing that, just one last note. Your taxpayer dollars have the power to transform the food and agricultural landscape in Illinois. A statewide good food purchasing policy can encourage sustainable practices that build climate resilience, support living wages, prioritize nutrition and public health, grow small farms and food businesses, and build a more equitable and just food system. A lot of things can happen because of this one policy. So you deserve to know how your taxpayer money is being spent, and Illinois deserves a food procurement policy that reinvests in Illinois.
I am behind all of that, and to show that I just did this action alert. It's done, it's sent.
Nice. Thanks for your actions.
Yes. Boom. All right. Let's do it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.